The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Oh, it's getting nuts. Getting down to finally the time where we can pick these players and stop speculating as to what the Commanders are going to do, what the Patriots are going to do, are the Bears going to take Caleb Williams? Whew. By this time Friday morning, we'll be looking back on it and going, oh, okay, so that's how it all unfolded. So we got that to deal with today. If you missed Mel Kiper a couple of weeks ago, I'm going to play part of that conversation for you later in the show today. Also, Orioles preview today. Orioles last night lost, late-night game in Anaheim. They lost 7-4, down 7-0. Bad start for Grayson Rodriguez. They came back, but not far enough, and they will try to win the series today. It's an afternoon game here on ESPN 630, so every Wednesday we do Orioles preview, and we'll look ahead to what they've got coming up. Off day tomorrow, then they got the A's coming to town, then the Yankees for 4, so pretty long homestand coming up in Baltimore for them. Also, before we get to the Caps, the Nationals played the Dodgers last night. And, when you see Patrick Corbin is going to be your starting pitcher, you go, okay, we kind of know how that's going to go. He's off to, or was off to, a pretty typical start this year, 0-3 with an ERA of 8.04. That's kind of been his line since the World Series. But he pitched well last night, pitched into the 6th inning, left with a 1-0 lead, hadn't given up a run, but the bullpen collapsed. They lost to the Dodgers 4-1. And the icing on the cake was a Shohei Ohtani home run, a blast of 450 feet. It was the second pitch that Matt Barnes threw. It went into the upper deck. And I saw something on ESPN today that they estimated the exit velocity at 118 miles an hour. That's the biggest exit velocity of his career. But I was thinking, this is kind of a modern measure. And I remember 20-some years ago, 25 years ago, whatever it was, Mark McGwire, when he was all roided up, and he hit a home run off Randy Johnson, who was a 6'8" guy who threw 100 miles an hour, and it was like a 535-foot blast. I wonder if they would have measured the exit velocity on that, what it might have been. But whatever it was a mammoth home run last night for Shohei, 450 feet, and the Nationals will continue their series tonight. The Orioles wrap things up, long West road trip coming to an end as they play their final game against the A's, not the A's, but the Angels this afternoon, and coverage here will start at 6:30. As for the Capitals last night, I guess you could say this was maybe the high point of the night.
Capitals trying to find a goal that'll get them within one. LaPierre shot, they score! Tipped by Tom Wilson on the way from the outside from Carlson. Off Wilson and in with 8:15 to go. We got a one-goal game in Gotham. It's 4-3 here in Game 2.
Yeah, and that was like 11 and a half minutes to go in the game. That was John Walton on the Caps radio network. That meant that they had a chance to tie this game, maybe win the game in regulation, send it to overtime. I mean, a lot of possibilities opened up in that third period, which they didn't have in Game 1, which lopsided, where they lost 4-1. They gave up 3 goals in just over 2 minutes of the second period. Last night, that gave you a lot of hope, but they, again, had dug themselves too deep of a hole, and you had heard Spencer Carbury say, look, we're probably a team that's going to be winning 3-2 games. They don't score a lot of goals. They set a record by going into the playoffs with a goal deficit of 37. No team had ever done that going into the postseason, so they needed to play a tight defensive game, weren't able to do it, and really, if you want to talk about that backbreaker, it was the shorthanded goal that they gave up late in the second period. So instead of, being down 3-2, they're down 4-2 as they go into the third period, and too much to make up. This was Carbury with his analysis of what he saw in Game 2. Encouraged off of Game 1, better, just not good enough.
Overall, much better than the first game. Did a ton of really, really good things. So that's the positive from a offensively way better, speed through the neutral zone way better. ozone time, sustained pressure, some different looks off that, some sequences where we're able to get some ozone changes, all exponentially better. Now, where is that, to your point of mistakes, is we make 4 or 5, probably even a few more that you just can't make this time of year. And it's tough because guys are trying and they want to do the right thing. You just, like, I look at some of the penalties that you take, you probably look at the penalties in the power play. See, I look at the play before that. Like, we ice the puck there. You can't ice the puck there this time of year. If we don't ice that puck, we're not pinned there, and then we take a cross-checking penalty and they score on the power play. Plays like that, we ice the puck, and then they score on the face-off play, right? They put Aaron's line against Lapierre's line. Those little things this time of year, because, and especially for us and our team and our makeup and our who we are as a group, the margin for error is so small. So those mistakes become game changers for us. Even though we did a lot of, like I said, a ton of good things.
Yeah, you keep hearing that margin for error so small. Team that doesn't score goals, you give up a shorthanded goal, you make mistakes, doesn't work. They were a 2 for 5 on the power play after going 0 for 4 in Game 1, and they did get more shots on goal. They had only 21 in Game 1. They had 26 last night, but again, coming up short. The feeling is that going home, they play better there. You know, maybe things turn a little bit, but they have totally been without much from Alex Ovechkin, and even Carbury admitted that he's struggling right now. He looks a little bit off, he said. He does not have a point in the series. He had his only shot on goal last night, but it was his turnover on the power play that gave the shorthanded goal right before the end of the second period. So, look, as we've seen with him over the years, he gets into these postseason games, these playoffs, and doesn't look quite as good as he did during the regular season. That wasn't always the case. Of course, he was the MVP as they won the Cup in 2018. But what we find out after the season wraps up is, oh, yeah, he was playing with a back injury. He was playing with a knee injury. I mean, he plays hurt. He's as tough as they come. But sometimes when he looks a little bit off, it's because of injury. And even though he's 38 years old, he still has a lot left in the tank, it looks like. I mean, he had a really good finish to the season, 31 goals, and scored, I think, 25 of them in the last 30 games or something like that. So he's still got something left, but it could be that he's playing hurt, and that is going to be a big problem as they go home for Game 3. But there is encouragement from Game 2 that the fact that they got the first goal of the game, which was important. They did have a lead for a little while. They battled back after falling behind 4-2, just as Tom Wilson said. They just couldn't quite get it done.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good hockey game. Both teams were battling. It was fast-paced, a lot of physical, fast playoff hockey. We hung in there. Just, again, a couple moments there where they get a couple goals, and then it's tough to battle back in this league. So. We got to find a way to get a lead and play with a lead a little bit longer. But excited to get home, try and turn the momentum.
So that'll be Game 3 Friday night at Capital One Arena, and then they play Game 4 on Sunday. This is pretty surprising to me, although maybe it shouldn't be. This is the first time in the Alex Ovechkin era that they have lost the first 2 games of a playoff series on the road. And you think about the postseason disappointment that they've had, a lot of it stems from the fact that they've gotten leads and blown them famously years. It seemed like, 5-6 years against Pittsburgh, they had 3-1 leads and coughed them up. Tony Kornheiser used to write an annual column about the choking dogs that, even before Ovechkin, that was their DNA, that they would give up series leads. So playing from behind, down 2-0, things will feel a lot different if they can win Game 3 on Friday night. But you keep hearing small margin for error, and that's probably going to be a big problem for them. They got to stay out of the power play. They got, as I keep saying, they got to keep playing 5-on-5. That's when they're at their best. But also, they just can't give up goals. It's just clear that they're just not. They know that. I mean, they're just not going to score goals. So if you're going to win, you're going to win a 3-2 game, a 2-1 game, something like that. And again, that stat that half of their 40 wins this year were by 1 goal. They play a lot of one-goal games. So series shifting back here, and we'll see what's what. Some NBA from last night, and it just goes to show you that you can't just assemble 3 stars and expect to be great. When you got Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, those are 3 all-star caliber players. That's great, but it's a team game, and we saw this again last night from the Phoenix Suns. When they struggle as a trio, forget about it. Durant, 6 of 15 from the field last night. He had 18 points. Beal, 6 of 17. Booker, 6 of 13. 18 for 45. Ain't going to get it done. Minnesota won the game by a score of 105-93, and they have a 2-0 series lead in that. Also, maybe not a surprise because Antetokounmpo didn't play again, but Indiana had a fairly easy time on the road at Milwaukee, winning 125 to 108. So that series now is even at a game, and this, which thanks a lot. But at least the NBA does this. They have reviewed the last 2 minutes. They call it the 2-minute report from the game the other night between the Sixers and the Knicks, which the Knicks won 104-101. And they say, we blew it there. Should have been a foul called there in that crazy sequence at the end. If you missed this, Jalen Brunson hit a 3-pointer, cut Philadelphia's lead to 101-99 with 27 seconds to go. Then Josh Hart stole the ball from Tyrese Maxey. That led to Dante DiVincenzo hitting a 3-pointer. Knicks led 102-101 with 13 seconds to go, and were able to close it out from there. But they say in the 2-minute report that DiVincenzo should never have been given the chance to take that shot. They ruled that Hart had fouled Maxey, which should have led to free throws for Philadelphia. Instead, there was this scrambling final play, and the Knicks won, and they now have a 2-0 lead in the series. Thanks a lot, League, but the 2-0 lead stands. It doesn't change. At least they admit mistakes, but there is a change on that. And one other thing before we get to Mel Kiper coming up here in just a moment. Caitlin Clark won the Sullivan Award last night for the 2nd straight year. The Sullivan Award goes to the nation's most outstanding athlete at the collegiate or Olympic level. It's an amateur award, and she is a great, great basketball player who played college basketball. She was an outstanding athlete at the collegiate level, but it's not an amateur award. Her high school coach went to pick it up. She's too busy out doing endorsements and things like that. Gave her acceptance speech by Zoom, this award given out in New York. The other finalists, and this is what I think it should be limited to. The other finalists, Olympic wrestler David Taylor, Olympic speed skater Emery Layham, gymnast Frederick Richard, Texas volleyball player Madison Skinner, and Paralympic swimmer Noah Jaffe. Those are the type of athletes who should get this recognition. Caitlin Clark technically was an amateur. She made like $3 million playing college basketball. She had an endorsement deal with Nike. The landscape has changed. So if you're going to keep the Sullivan Award an amateur award, then you're going to have to limit it to athletes who deserve this type of recognition. Not that Caitlin Clark isn't great, not that she didn't do wonders for college basketball. 18.9 million people, peaking at 24 million, watching the championship game against South Carolina. But come on, she's not an amateur athlete. This award was created 94 years ago when you had true amateurism, or at least the appearance of true amateurism. Maybe there was some money under the table. But let's face it, Caitlin Clark is not an amateur athlete. In fact, what was the discussion at the end of the season? Well, why don't you come back for another year because you could make more money playing at Iowa? That used to be kind of a joke that a star athlete would have to take a pay cut to go pro. So, Caitlin Clark winning an award where she's up against Olympic wrestlers, speed skaters, Paralympians, and she wins it. I think they have to recategorize this, and I think they have to eliminate athletes who are in revenue sports. This, the landscape changed tremendously over the last 2 years with NIL, but the spirit of this award is not for someone like Caitlin Clark. Not that she wasn't great, Not that she wasn't playing a collegiate sport, but the spirit of the Sullivan Award is not an endorser who just signed a $28 million contract with Nike, and it was in Rays, but she was still making money from Nike and many other places while she was playing college basketball. Coming up, more history. 20 years ago today, Eli Manning and the draft and how it all played out, plus a story that you may not be aware of in regards to the trade that Eli was able to engineer to the New York Giants. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Orioles preview in the next hour. Tony's coming up on what is so far a sunny day. There's getting a little rain in the forecast, but looking out our windows here on Jennifer Street, it looks like pretty much a cloudless day. A couple of white clouds out there, but no rain clouds. But we'll see. Things can change. 20 years ago today, we had the Eli Manning draft, the 2004 NFL draft. And Eli Manning was projected to be the number one pick coming out of Ole Miss, part of the Manning dynasty. His brother had become a star in the NFL. His dad was an excellent quarterback. He just had the misfortune of being drafted by a terrible organization in the Saints, or he might have become a Hall of Fame quarterback as well. But Eli was the pick, and the San Diego Chargers had the number one selection. And Eli, who, has a great reputation, not a troublemaker, part of a Manning family that's considered royalty in football, he said, probably with the backing of his dad, no, I'm not going to play for the Chargers. Now, he didn't have the leverage, it seemed, that, well, at least John Elway tried when he had signed with the Yankees, and he said to the Baltimore Colts, if you draft me, I won't play for you, I'll play baseball. Nobody really believed that because he really wasn't that great of a baseball player. But Bo Jackson actually had pulled it off some years earlier when he said, I will never play for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and if the Bucs draft me, I'm going to play baseball, which is what he did. He played for the Kansas City Royals. Before the following year, his name went back in the draft. Al Davis took him with the Raiders in the 5th round, and he went to play with them. But Eli didn't seem to have that kind of leverage, but he just said, no, I'm just not going to sign with the Chargers. I guess theoretically he could have sat out a year and gone back into the draft, but that did not become necessary, as we'll get to. But draft in those days, it started on a Saturday, and you did the first 3 rounds, and then they'd wrap things up on Sunday. It was a 2-day event before it became the primetime extravaganza that it is now. But ESPN was covering it, and word broke early that if the Chargers took Eli, he wasn't going to go there. Sal Paolantonio was stationed at the Giants headquarters in New Jersey, and he already knew going into the draft, as others did, that there was likely a trade in the works and that Eli somehow or another was going to wind up with the Giants. But early on, as the coverage began, I think the start of the draft was at noon, as the coverage began, this was the buzz, and this was the report from Sal Pal in Jersey.
Here's the news that we've heard, is that there's a possibility of a way to get out of this, a scenario that's being discussed behind the scenes, that the Chargers would take Eli Manning with the first pick, and the Giants at number 4 might take Phillip Rivers, and that the two teams would then trade the picks. Everybody knows that Marty Schottenheimer likes Phillip Rivers, and the Giants, of course, covet Eli Manning. That is one possibility, Boomer, that is being discussed as a way to get out of this.
Well, we have a little more time at that, Sal, and of course we'll check in with Sean and you and all around the league. But right now, we might as well check into the green room where Eli Manning, his father Archie, are waiting to hear what happens along with the rest of America. Let's go down to Susie Colbert. Suze?
Thanks, Chris. Right off the top, Eli, why don't you want to play for the Chargers?
We're not really giving details right now. We just we've made our decision, and that's what we're sticking to.
Who's influenced you the most?
It's not really an influence. This was my decision. It was, I wanted to do this. I was not, told to do this. We talked about it, and I thought it was the best idea, so I went with it.
Archie, 1998, Peyton, number 1 pick to the Colts. The year before, they were 3-13. Why is this different?
Well, all teams are different. It was kind of a start over there, and people that were there, a lot of people that they had. There's so many, as I said, we weren't going to talk about all these issues and all these factors. There were a lot of them presented to Eli, and he made this decision. Every organization is different, Susan.
As a family, how emotional, difficult has it been challenging the NFL?
It's been tough as a family, and it's been, you know, we're concerned about Eli, but we're also concerned about we care about this league and the people. We're not trying to distract or disrupt anything. So it was a very hard decision for Eli. Our family, we're supporting.
We all know the tradition, number one pick. What happens when your name is called? What are you going to do?
You know, again, I don't know what's going to happen right now. I don't know what the Chargers are going to do. So, you know, if my name's called first or whenever it's called, you know, I'm going to do what everybody else does.
If the Chargers call your name when I talk to you after the pick, will you be wearing a Chargers hat?
You know, I don't know. We'll see what happens.
All right, a little laugh there at the end. But first of all, nobody believed then, nobody believed now, 20 years later to the day, that this was Eli's decision. This was Archie, the old man, engineering this. And I don't know if he put the kid out to dry like that, but this is, you know, not unlike what had happened, 21 years earlier, when John Elway said he wasn't going to play for the Baltimore Colts. And the reason for that was his father, Jack Elway, who had been a coach and had coached against Frank Cush when Cush was at Arizona State, didn't want his son to play for Frank Cush. And Cush at the time was the coach of the Baltimore Colts. So he did everything he could to not wind up with the Colts. And finally, Bob Irsay blinked. Ernie Accorsi was the general manager. He was not going to trade John Elway. He thought John Elway was far and away the best quarterback in the draft. They needed a quarterback because Art Schlichter had flamed out, got in gambling problems, and they thought that he would be the one that would save the franchise. And in fact, after he was traded, it was pretty much known that that was it, that the franchise was going to move. So the dad was behind the move for Elway not to go to the Colts, and the dad was clearly behind this. And as you'll hear here, it worked. But that's them in the green room. They're waiting for the number one pick. Chargers have the number one pick. Eli, as you just heard, has made it clear he's not going to play for the Chargers. But what happens when Paul Tagliabue comes out to announce the number one pick?
With the first choice in the 2004 NFL Draft, the San Diego Chargers select Eli Manning, quarterback, Mississippi.
Well, a moment that he's dreamt about, that Peyton has lived, and Archie as the number 2 pick overall in 71 was as close to, is not quite at this moment what he might have thought. However,
well, here's the thing about this, is in speaking with Archie this week.
Wait a minute, hold on, Mort. Classy move. He's holding up a Charger jersey. Let's notice that.
In visiting with Archie this week, he has expressed this. He hates this for Eli because he knows this is supposed to be the best weekend of his life right now, and he understands that what has come out publicly has spoiled this somewhat for Eli. And now they're trying to do the right thing by the NFL and certainly by Eli as well.
Yeah, he's playing along. I think at that point he knew that there was a trade in the works, but he's playing along. He's holding up the jersey. You don't see him smile, but he's standing there, and he's doing what you're supposed to do at the Dog and Pony Show. Okay, so now it comes to pick number 4. Eli is still with the Chargers at this point. He hasn't signed a contract, but the Chargers have used the top pick to take him. Then comes the Giants pick.
With the 4th pick in the 2004 NFL Draft, the New York Giants select Phillip Rivers, quarterback, North Carolina State.
As we told you, what did we tell you? As soon as Gallery was gone, now, this doesn't mean there's a deal.
Well, no,
there's got to be
listen,
one.
It tells me there is a deal because the Giants, from what I understand, had Ben Roethlisberger rated over Phillip Rivers. Now, maybe that was bad information, but at the same time, by taking Rivers, it tells you there is a significant trade here in the works between the Chargers and the New York Giants.
And, in fact, that's what happened. Chris Mortensen got that 100% right, and about 20 minutes later came this.
Here it is. I mean, just to recap. So they trade the rights to the 2 quarterbacks, essentially trading the first-round picks, okay? Right. And so San Diego gets a 3 later today and a 1 and a 5 next year. They both capitulated. I just had a feeling this was going to... It's funny that they couldn't get this done in days, but we got it done in a half an hour. but they got it done.
Yeah, so they got it done, and Eli winds up going to the Giants, wins 2 Super Bowls. Phillip Rivers has a great career in San Diego. Los Angeles actually plays his last year in the league with the Colts and may be headed to the Hall of Fame. Probably will be in the Hall of Fame, but never played in a Super Bowl. Eli played in 2 Super Bowls, won both of them, beat the Patriots and Tom Brady in both of them, had career numbers that were not as good as Phillip Rivers. And the question is, will both of them get into the Hall of Fame? I think they probably will. But, the key is to win Super Bowls. It's not to have great stats. And I kind of look at Phillip Rivers like Sonny Jurgensen. Sonny never got to play in a Super Bowl. He was a backup on the Eagles when they won the championship in 1960. Rivers got to an AFC championship game, but that's as far as he got. And Eli had the good fortune of playing for, well, again, you want to go to a good organization, and that's what ultimately, tubed his father's career. His father was good. Archie was a good quarterback, but not a Hall of Fame quarterback because he may have been the most sacked quarterback in history. They didn't keep track of stats until deep into his career, but the Saints couldn't protect him. They were a terrible team, and he got the crap beat out of him. So all in all, it turned out to be the right move for Eli. But it was quite a scene in 2004 at that draft. Now, the local angle to this, and this is interesting as well. That was the draft where Joe Gibbs had returned. It was his first draft as Gibbs 2.0. And the speculation was they were going to take Kellen Winslow Jr., a tight end, because, Gibbs, offensive guy, and getting a tight end, his father, one of the greats of all time, and he had had a great career at Miami, and they were going to take him. And he had also, and this is Gibbs, buying into the new NFL that he came back to that included free agency, and he had to have himself a running back. Now, there were extenuating circumstances on Champ Bailey. Champ Bailey wanted to get out of Washington, was not going to re-sign here. So they trade Champ Bailey and a number 2 pick. A second-round pick. They treated draft choices like they were, mud on the bottom of their shoe. They send a second-round pick and future Hall of Famer Champ Bailey to the Denver Broncos to get Clinton Portis, who was very good here, good for Gibbs, but not nearly a Hall of Famer. They had also, and this was, again, Gibbs jumping the gun, because Mark Brunell was going to be released by Jacksonville, but Gibbs went out and gave them a 3rd-round pick. So they went into the first day with only 1 pick, and it was assumed that they were going to take Kellen Winslow. Like, this would be the tight end that Gibbs really didn't have. He didn't have a Pro Bowl tight end when he was coaching the first time around. So now the league is changing, and he's got that. But they wound up taking Sean Taylor, and it was Clinton Portis who pushed for that. He'd been, of course, teammates with Taylor at Miami, and turned out to be the right pick. Though tragically, he only played 4 years here before he was killed. But you think about the value of draft picks, and the way they just frittered away 2 high picks, a second and a third. Champ Bailey, even up for Portis, was a bad trade for Washington, much less throwing in a second-round pick. And then Mark Brunell, who you could have had for nothing, you give up a 3rd-rounder to get him. But they did make the playoffs twice under Gibbs, and that's better than any other coach did under Dan Snyder. The first-round pick, by the way, that the Chargers got in the trade when they sent Eli to the Giants, what they got was Sean Merriman. They took him in the first round the next year, 12 overall, linebacker from Maryland. And he had a good career in San Diego, played 6 years there. He was the defensive rookie of the year. He made 3 Pro Bowls, finished up his career with 2 years in Buffalo. But it's kind of amazing when you look back 20 years ago today that Eli isn't, I guess if he would have turned out to be a bust, that there'd be more people jumping all over him. But he isn't regarded as a problem guy, a bad guy. He's part of the Manning dynasty. They're cuddly. They're lovable. They do all this TV now. They're funny together. But that's kind of a crap move there. That's a move that people do when they're trying to make trouble. And he did. He made enough trouble, and he got himself traded to the New York Giants. As it turned out, the way he found out about it, he was walking from one interview to another, still with the Chargers, and he hears this little kid yelling that he's been traded to the Giants. And Eli asked the guy walking alongside him, a security guy, is that right? And he checks his earphone. He gets a message from somebody involved with the draft. He said, yeah, it looks like you've been traded to the Giants. The kid's name was Dylan Sherwin. And 20 years later, we look back on that as a 12-year-old. He happened to be at the draft with his dad, and they had some backstage passes, and he heard that the trade was going through. So the way that Eli found out for sure, I mean, he kind of had an idea, but the way he found out for sure was from a 12-year-old kid. Pretty cool. All right, coming up in the next hour, more on the Caps' loss last night, plus Orioles preview as the Orioles close out their series today in Anaheim. Stay with us. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. All right, we do Orioles preview every Wednesday. We're going to talk to Kerry Watson, who is the Director of Affairs for the Orioles. We're going to tell you about a program called Adopt a School and find out how things are going with the renovation of the stadium. Interested in that. There's $600 million set aside to refurbish what is already a great stadium. I don't know what they're going to do to make it even better, but hope to get some information from him on that. Also, we'll look back on last night's loss. And, of course, it's the day before the draft. And it does look like it's going to be Jayden Daniels, but things could change. Rick's Minturn is here today. Daniels, you okay with that?
Yeah, I actually watched every throw and every run on Sunday of Jayden Daniels, 2023.
You went to the All-22?
There's just an hour-long YouTube video.
Really?
I grinded the tape.
Okay, so with your untrained eye, let's be fair. I mean, you watched a lot of football, but you're a young man and you didn't play football. What makes you think that he will be good?
To be honest, I wasn't that. There was two games that I was really, really impressed. Florida and Ole Miss.
Well, Florida was unbelievable.
Besides that, I didn't love it.
Yeah.
But I've been less impressed by the Drake May I've watched. So
yeah. Here's something, everybody's looking for nits to pick right now. There's two things. What have we seen with dads at highly drafted quarterbacks here in the past? We had the Robert Griffin III influence, where the dad and Robert sat together watching Kirk Cousins not run the pistol in a win over Cleveland, where the dad said to RG3 or RG3 said to the dad, whatever, they came away with the consensus that Mike Shanahan was trying to ruin his career so he could play Kirk Cousins, and that was sort of the beginning of the end, the dad influence there. The tragedy of Dwayne Haskins, where they had Haskins, and the dad influence there, probably not effective. And now there's the mom thing with Jayden Daniels. May not be a big deal, but the Jayden Daniels started his career at Arizona State, and Herman Edwards has been hit with a 5-year show cause penalty because some illegal stuff that he did during the COVID period. He actively participated in meetings with prospects on campus and other places, and the NCAA, for whatever it's worth, came down on him. But in the report, there was information that Regina Jackson, who is Jayden Daniels' mom, had paid for recruits to come to the school, which is illegal, paid for flights and lodging during a dead period. Who knows what these dead periods are, but there was things there that should not have happened. The school has agreed to disassociate with the mom for 5 years. Well, unless she has other sons that are capable of being Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, I don't think that's too much to worry about. But the mom influence could be something. I'm just saying it could be something. We've seen the dad influence impact two quarterbacks here, not well. Just pump your brakes a little bit on that. And then this, the other day, where Daniels, a lot of these guys get hooked up with products now, and they go around selling them. Who's he with? He's with the Head and Shoulders campaign, Make Every Wash Count campaign. If you have a shaved head, I guess you can't do that, but he's got hair, so he's endorsing them. But he's said to CBS Sports that he wants to become the greatest running quarterback in league history. And he used two examples of great running quarterbacks, Michael Vick and Lamar Jackson. Neither one of them participated in a Super Bowl, just saying. The greatest running quarterback of all time, may have been Michael Vick, but Steve Young ran pretty well. He rounded up with the right team and did win a Super Bowl. Randall Cunningham could run, never went to a Super Bowl. Cam Newton went to one Super Bowl and lost. But he says, I'm trying to go past them. Well, in a 17-game schedule, which is probably going to be 18 games, you probably need to diminish your running as the years go by. He was great in college, no question about it. Ran for over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns last year, averaged 8.4 yards a carry, ran for 234 yards and 2 touchdowns against Florida. And he said in this interview that he would rather score on a long run than a long pass. Well, that needs to change too, because you're in the league to throw touchdown passes. If you'd like to run, there's the running back position, which has been devalued incredibly over the years. It doesn't pay as well. But yes, if you have speed there, you can be a running back or you can be a wide receiver. But if you're going to be a quarterback, you're going to need to throw the football. Now, he does say that he values his football IQ, which is important, no question about it. He says being able to eliminate what the defense isn't doing. I have 2 or 3 things in my head pre-snap, being able to check into runs and check protections based on leverage, stuff like that. I take pride in learning about football and knowing about football at a high level. That is incredibly important at the quarterback position. So that's a good thing. But he does acknowledge that he has to be smarter about the hits he takes. I don't think he realizes the extent of that because they're bigger, faster, stronger when you get to the NFL. And he says he loves playing football, which is a good thing. So there's that. Let me. I'll jump back to the draft stuff in a moment. Let me just clean up from the Caps last night. This is Spencer Carbury, coach, seeing his team lose 2 on the road, looking forward. And I don't think that home ice means squat in the playoffs, but Spencer Carbury is hanging on to this as they go into Game 3 on Friday night.
There's no doubt we're in a difficult spot going back home, but being able to play on home ice, and this is a great building to play in on the road, and you can tell. But I've been this year playing in Washington, coaching this team, and there's been some games that I was caught off guard by the energy in the building and our fan base. And so Game 3 back in our building, a playoff game, I'm excited to see what that looks like. And we're going to go home and this team, just similar to what happened tonight, as the mistakes, all the little things that happen, the icings, all the things that I talked about, fights to the bitter end, right? And we're right there against the best team in the National Hockey League. So I don't think it'll be any different in Game 3 or the rest of this series.
Well, one thing they have to do is they have to keep the Rangers from putting the puck in the net. Last 2 games, they've given up 4, including a shorthander last night. As Carbury said after Game 1, they got to win games 3-2, and so they got to keep them off the board. The other thing is they got to stay out of the penalty box. The Rangers scored 2 of their goals on power plays last night. Caps did score twice in the power play after going 0-for-4 in Game 1, but Charlie Lindgren knows that they're not going to win games unless they play 5-on-5 most of the way.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we know we have to play 5-on-5. We got to stay out of the box. We got to be disciplined. Can't take unnecessary penalties. And we play 5-on-5. We feel pretty good about our game.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Again, the 0-2 on the road. You think of the Capitals in the playoffs and how disappointing they've been over the years. Yes, they won the Cup in 2018, but the history of the team, even pre-Ovechkin, was that they would get these leads and cough them up, and the choking dog columns that Tony used to write all the time in the Washington Post. That's the DNA of the team. So maybe it's a good thing that they're down 0-2. You know, everything will change. The feeling will change if they manage to win on Friday night. If they lose, it's 0-3, and maybe that's happened a couple of times in league history. But you're pretty much shot at this point. And look, you know, the Rangers are the better team. It's different in the playoffs. It's random. Things change, but in order for this team to be competitive, they got to play low-scoring games, and they can't give up 4 goals. They can't go into the third period after giving up 4 as they have in the last 2 games. That's just not going to work. Or actually, was it 3-1, I guess, after period 2 in game 1, but they kind of blew it open with that stretch of the second period where they scored 3 goals. So we'll see what happens on Friday night. Meantime, back to the draft, and it's not a done deal, but it does appear that it's going to be Jayden Daniels. A lot of yak at this point, and it goes with the territory when you have this much time before the draft after the season. But the latest is that Antonio Pierce, who played here for Washington, has been the coach of the Raiders. Did a really good job as an interim last year and got an extension. And he's got history with Jayden Daniels. They had been together at Arizona State, and they like each other. And the report is that Daniels would prefer to play with the Raiders. Well, there's a report that the Raiders tried to trade up. They did what they could to try to get up to number 2, but they may have to settle for Michael Penix Jr. if he's still around. But they did go for 3 years together, and Daniels did play well when he was with Arizona State. The Raiders still could be looking to trade up, but it doesn't look like they're going to get as high as number 2 because Adam Peters said last week that he's very unlikely to move off of that. So you may have a quarterback who's not exactly thrilled with the team that he's going to, but is apparently going to be satisfied in going to the team that is here. And this is Adam Schefter yesterday on our morning show on Sportsmanlike.
I don't think that's going to develop into an issue, really. I think Jayden Daniels smart enough to recognize that this isn't free agency. This is the draft. And you go where you're drafted in this world. And, Washington, to me, there are signs that continue to point to him being the second overall pick. They're not going to be swayed by what he thinks. Look, back in the day, Jayden Daniels, it's no secret, had a close relationship with Antonio Pierce. I'm sure in a perfect world, he might have looked to play in Las Vegas. The fact of the matter is it's not a perfect world. The Raiders are the 13th pick, and I think the Commanders have a high level of interest in Jayden Daniels. There's a lot of players that want to play in a lot of different places. Again, not how the draft works. And Jayden Daniels is prepared to go wherever he goes, be happy with that, and then go be the face of that franchise wherever he's selected on Thursday night. And my guess would be it is at 2 to the Washington Commanders.
Yeah, and the Top Golf thing, it just, it was just when you look at the zoom out, it's crazy that because he was with a group of other quarterbacks, that upset him, and he doesn't want to come here. I like what John Keim did yesterday doing his TV report on what the Commanders are going to do. He did it in front of Top Golf. Yeah, that was a pretty good move on his part. As for other trades that could happen, and it seems pretty certain that Minnesota is going to move up to try to get a quarterback. This is what Schefter believes and what he's hearing as terms of what will happen in the first round tomorrow night.
I think the Vikings would like to be there in the event that for some reason Washington doesn't take Jayden Daniels, which, again, the pick hasn't been turned in, and you never know how these things go. Again, I think there are signs that point to Jayden Daniels, and I think he will be. But if he's not, I'm sure Minnesota would love to add Jayden Daniels. And if they can't get Jayden Daniels, yes, I do believe that they'd have a level of interest in both Drake May and J.J. McCarthy, by the way, as the Patriots do. And the Patriots have been there at 3, and the two teams that have called the most in order would be the Minnesota Vikings, who have picks 11 and 23, and the New York Giants, who are at number 6. Now, I don't know how aggressive the Giants are going to be, and it would have to be for the right guy and the right price, and I don't know that ever happens, and maybe the Giants are just trying to dupe everybody. We don't exactly know. But to me, somehow, some way, the way it's shaping up, it certainly seems like Drake May and J.J. McCarthy, in one way or another, seem destined to wind up in New England and Minnesota one way or the other. Can Minnesota get up to 3 to get Drake May? Maybe so. If not, maybe they get J.J. McCarthy. If the Patriots stay where they are, probably Drake May. If they trade out, probably J.J. McCarthy. So it seems somehow, some way, going into this, and we'll see how it shakes out, that Drake May and J.J. McCarthy seem ticketed one way or another for New England and Minnesota. And let's see how that combination plays itself out.
Schefter, on Thursday night, we expect that there'll be a number of teams trying to trade up into the top 10 for a quarterback. I'm curious from what you're hearing from NFL people, could we see a team trade up into the top 10 for a position player? And if so, what's the position group that they would likely be targeting?
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't know if we're going to see as much action of teams trading up into the top 10. I think everybody is expecting and waiting for Minnesota to make its move from number 11 into the top 10 somewhere. I think it's going to be cost prohibitive to go up to number 4 at Arizona's spot. I think the Cardinals sit there, and to me, if you have a chance to go draft a guy like Marvin Harrison, it's hard not to do that. 5, the Chargers. I would think that they're going to be offensive line, and they could get offensive line at 11 if they decided to move out to Minnesota. That's a spot that makes sense to me. The Giants, if they don't get the quarterback that they want, and even if they could, they still might take one of the top wide receivers in this draft. And when you're talking, Chris, about a team trading up, I keep waiting to hear if there's a team that's going to make a bold move for one of these elite wide receivers in this draft. We've seen that type of thing happen before. I believe Buffalo once traded up for Sammy Watkins, if my memory serves me correct.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the Atlanta Falcons trading up for Julio Jones. And would I be floored if there were another team that tried to make a bold, aggressive play to get one of these receivers? No. I'm unaware of it right now, but I totally could see it happen. And these are the kinds of things that seem to pick up steam as the draft gets closer.
So it's Adam Schefter yesterday on Unsportsmanlike here on ESPN 630. Last night, Tony and Mike on the draft. Wilbon always makes fun of the draft, but there are reports that the Patriots are willing to trade out of number 3 and possibly trade down because they need so many players and not necessarily take Drake May or J.J. McCarthy or even, well, I would think if Jayden Daniels is still on the board, they might take him. Who knows? But this was Tony and Mike yesterday on PTI kicking around what the Patriots might do.
It's been widely assumed the Patriots would use that pick on a quarterback. Wilbon, you have been doing mock drafts for weeks
every
now.
Night.
Does it make sense to you that the Patriots would trade out of number 3 and not use it on a quarterback?
Yes, because quarterbacks are overstated constantly. Every single draft. All the draftniks are screaming about how great a guy is, how great a footwork he's got, how he's got a gun on his right shoulder.
Right.
And it's just, by Thanksgiving, you're going, what were you talking about? Because everybody tells you that every quarterback is going to be Troy Aikman, but he winds up half of them being Carson Wentz.
Half of them.
Okay, half of them. So if you're the Patriots, just 4 years ago, you drafted a guy that was supposed to be the next Tom Brady. He's going to be the next Tommy. And he came from Nick Saban. And he was being transferred from Saban to Belichick. And he was going to carry the Patriot. Oh, wait. He's gone.
That's right.
Okay, so don't tell me that every one of these quarterbacks is a franchise savior. I don't believe that. And I don't believe it has to be 3 deep. And I don't believe a Michigan kid who threw like 4 passes a week has to now be moved up 4 to get at the 4th position. I don't believe that.
So this is unexpected to me that they would do this, because everybody who makes a living predicting drafts says the same thing. They say there are 3 quarterbacks in this draft who can step in at some point this year and be a credible starter. They say Caleb Williams is one, Jayden Daniels is one, and Drake May is one. As you know, I am not a math major. But if you're sitting at number 3, you're going to get one of those if you want one of those. So, and as you say, they did trade Mac Jones away. They now have Jacoby Brissett and Bailey Zappi, who are okay, but not franchise quarterbacks, which Mac Jones was supposed to be.
Yeah.
So if the Patriots don't want any one of these 3, or J.J. McCarthy, or Bo Nix, or Michael Penix, what it says to me, Mike, is that Gerard Mayo has looked at the talent and said, we have no talent. We got to build this team for enough years, and quarterback's not a priority.
Okay, and so there's 2 things. That, what you just said, and I'm looking at these guys, and neither one of them seems any better than Mac Jones prepared to be here for 12 years.
Okay. Well, look, this is a quarterback-rich draft. If you're the Patriots, you're saying, well, probably like the Commanders, but they've had a lot more success in the last 25 years. But you're saying we don't expect to be at number 3 anymore. So we're at number 3 in a quarterback-loaded draft where as many as they're saying 6 could go in the first round. We'll see. At least 4 will. that you use it. And whoever's there, whether it's J.J. McCarthy, maybe even Michael Penix, there are people who say Penix is the best quarterback in this draft. Who knows? But I think that you don't pass on that. I don't think you deal away the pick, and I think you got to have a guy who's a franchise quarterback. Their franchise quarterback was taken in the 6th round 24 years ago, but that was an anomaly. That's not going to happen again. So I would expect him to take one. Tom Libero's got a column today, by the way, on quarterbacks, and it's I've talked about this so much over the years, but we are at the 30th anniversary of the disastrous Heath Shuler pick. He was the 3rd pick in the 1994 draft. Now you got to remember this. The championships that the Redskins won under Joe Gibbs in the 1980s and the early 1990s were not with Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Probably the best of them was Joe Theismann, who's gotten some consideration. He was the MVP of the league in '83, but not a Hall of Fame quarterback. Doug Williams, had he wound up with the right organization, would have been a Hall of Famer, I think, but he was with a really bad one with Tampa Bay, and he bounced to the USFL, and he had some injuries. And realistically, if you look at his stats from that 1987 season, he wasn't great. He was better than Jay Schrader, but he got benched for Schrader. And in the 2 playoff games leading into the Super Bowl, he wasn't spectacular. They were able to run the football, which they did effectively. He had that incredible second quarter in that Super Bowl where they beat the Broncos and throwing 4 touchdown passes, and of course the social element where he was the first African American to start at quarterback in the Super Bowl and the first to win it. And then Mark Rippon, who had one great year behind an offensive line where he was only sacked 7 times, but he was a journeyman quarterback. And that had run its course, and by 1994, they were ready to start a new era with Norv Turner, who had coached Troy Aikman in Dallas and won back-to-back Super Bowls. And Shuler looked like the guy. He was runner-up for the Heisman Trophy. He had played very well at Tennessee, and Norv fell in love with him. Now, that was not a good quarterback draft because the other possibility was Trent Dilfer, who wound up going number 6 to Tampa. He won a Super Bowl, but really he won it with a defense that was historic in Baltimore. He was a journeyman quarterback as well. Heath was terrible, and Heath didn't know the plays. Heath wasn't very smart. He just was not NFL caliber. But Norv Turner was considered at the time to be an offensive guru. Look at what he had done at Dallas. And this is what Tom writes in his column today. Turner said that his staff in Dallas believed that Shuler could be as good as Troy Aikman. And this was one of the big factors in me being as interested in the job as I was, Turner told reporters after they selected Shuler. Having the 3rd pick and knowing there were 2 good young quarterbacks out there and the chance to start with a young quarterback and watch him develop, that's the ultimate thing, not only for a few head coaches, but for any head coach. So he saw this as the beginning of a wonderful relationship. Remember, when he came to Dallas, Aikman had been coached. I forget who the offensive coordinator was before, but and Aikman credits Norv for this. It was Aikman and Norv working together to make him to become a Hall of Fame quarterback. And foolishly, he thought he could do that with Heath Shuler. We had a guy who's now been the legendary voice of the Detroit Lions for many years and TV in Detroit, Dan Miller, a friend of mine. He was covering the team at the time, and he said he was standing on the sidelines with Norv watching Heath practice, and he says, "Doesn't he look to you like Troy Aikman?" No, he never did, and never did in a game. He was just a mess. And as Tom writes in his column today, I doubt anyone doing the ratings knows more about offense than Turner did 30 years ago. So calm down and hope they get it right, because you certainly, as they well know, don't really know. In the days before the players' union agreed to a rookie wage scale, Shuler held out for 2 weeks in a contract dispute before finally reporting after signing an 8-year, $19.2 million contract, which was the richest in franchise history and the biggest rookie deal in NFL history. No top golf outing for Shuler, he writes. With all the furor over the top golf trip, you would have thought that Adam Peters took the team's draft prospects to Larry Flint's Hustler Club on their little social experiment. They may have learned who plays well with others, but they still don't know who will be an NFL quarterback. Neither did Norv Turner in 1994, and neither did you. And there was a very good column the other day by Sally Jenkins I said, look, the hit rate's about 25%. You know, you can look and mull over the tape and have all these interviews, whether you do it one-on-one or you take everybody to Top Golf, but it's a crapshoot. And here's Tom looking back 30 years ago at Norv Turner, who was considered to be the offensive guy at the time. Like Troy Aikman says he owes his career to Norv Turner. That's how much of an offensive genius he was. But he wasn't great at picking a quarterback. And because before he got there, they were focusing on Dilfer. They knew they had to take a quarterback. But when Norv arrived, he said, oh, no, we've been looking at Heath Schuler when we were in Dallas, and we think he can be the next Troy Aikman. Nah, he really wasn't. He was terrible. In fact, he got benched in his rookie year. They didn't even start him at the beginning. They took a journeyman guy named John Freeze. He started the first few games while they were getting Schuler ready to play. Schuler played. He threw 5 interceptions in a god-awful game against the Cardinals. And the following week, Norv said, what the hell? And he started Gus Frerotte in a game against the Indianapolis Colts. And Jim Harbaugh was the coach. They had Marshall Faulk. They were a pretty good team. And he was great. Frerotte had like the game of his career, threw 3 touchdown passes, was named NFC Offensive Player of the Week. And then you had a quarterback battle for a couple of years, and finally they just discarded Schuler, and the whole thing was over with. You hope it doesn't work out that way with whoever they take tomorrow night, but it could. It's always a possibility. Coming up, Orioles preview. We'll talk to Kerry Watson, who is the Vice President of Public Affairs for the team. We'll tell you about an Adopt the School campaign. Plus, we'll look at the team. And on Around the Horn yesterday, they debated Jackson Holliday, who finally had his second hit of the season last night, but he's hitting .059 through 10 games. And so far, at the plate, hasn't looked good at all. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.